Each time a man stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope.
Gilbert and Eleanor Krause were an American Jewish couple who faced isolationist attitudes in the United States, restrictive immigration laws, congressional opposition to Jewish refugees, and Jewish organizations who fought to dissuade them. Despite these obstacles, Mr. and Mrs. Krause went into the heart of Nazi Germany and saved 50 Jewish children, completing the largest private rescue mission in United States history and taking a stand against anti-Semitism and the atrocities of the Holocaust. This is their story. In the 1930s, anti-Semitism grew rampant through parts of the Western world. The United States' wish to be isolationist in World War II made it difficult for Jews seeking refuge from Germany to migrate to America. The immigrants were required to obtain extensive documentation about their identity, background, financial resources, and medical history, which required documents that were often impossible to obtain.
Now the idea was that Jews were a separate people, arguing that the entire Jewish race, as they defined it, was a parasitical people. They lived off the efforts of others. This ties into the old idea of Jews as bankers, Jews as moneylenders, Jews as outside of society, but it takes it really to a new extreme, to the idea that Jews can't be integrated because they're fundamentally different people, and finally, in the sort of final iteration, not even people at all.
President Franklin Delano Roosevelt took only limited action in response to the humanitarian emergency. He worked with Congress to allow some German Jews in, but a quota system was put into place, which only allowed a small amount of refugees into the country. Even as Americans read about the persecution of German Jews in the media, few supported an increase in immigration, particularly while the country was still suffering from the effects of the Great Depression. In the United States, 1 out of every 10 Americans felt that all Jews should be deported. Gilbert and Eleanor Krause were an American Jewish couple living in Philadelphia. Gilbert Krause was a lawyer as Eleanor took care of their 2 children. In 1939, the president of Independent Order B'rith Shalom, a Jewish organization the Krauses partook in, Louis Levine, approached Gilbert with the idea of saving Jewish children trapped in Nazi Germany. Levine offered to plan the mission out with him, fund it, and give him a 25-bedroom country retreat to use for the kids for the summer that they arrived. The Krauses had become aware of the new exclusions in the workforce and school system for Jews in the 1930s, and the work camps that had started in Germany and Austria, where hundreds of Jews were rounded up from their homes and taken. With this in mind, the couple then immediately started to plan their way to take a stand in Nazi Germany. One of the obstacles that the Krauses faced was working around the current legal system regarding immigration. There was a strict quota system in place, and once Austria was annexed by Germany, their quota system was combined. Mr. Krause knew a congressman from law school, Leon Sachs, that he connected with to find a way to meet with George Messersmith, the Undersecretary of State. Krause and Levine then met with Messersmith in Washington, D.C., where they discussed using dead number visas to save the children. Dead number visas were pre-approved visas that were rejected or returned at the last minute by people who couldn't leave when their time for departure came. Messersmith believed that the plan was plausible after speaking with a U.S. consul in Berlin. When Gilbert returned to Philadelphia, he began research with Eleanor on the regulations for immigrant children. Labor Department regulations made it impossible for any organization to bring children unaccompanied by parents into the country. In order to follow them, they needed to make affidavits for each child to prove sponsorship. While working on these affidavits, Eleanor received help from the Hebrew Immigrant Society. They informed her about necessary legal documents and the importance of showing financial security. After 4 weeks of working on the affidavits, Eleanor finished 54, 4 extra in case something fell through. In the next meeting with Messersmith, Eleanor was advised not to go with Gilbert to Germany because the atmosphere was not safe for Jewish women. Eleanor then suggested that their friend, Robert Schless, should travel with Mr. Krause because he was a doctor, spoke fluent German, and could help review the candidates for immigration. Schless and Krause left from New York on April 7, 1939 for Germany. Once they arrived in Berlin, Gilbert found that Nazi stormtroopers filled the city. They met with Raymond Geist, a U.S. ambassador. He informed them that their best chance for finding children who were eligible to immigrate was in Vienna, Austria. Schlesien-Krauss then communicated with the Jewish community in Vienna, and word began to spread about their mission in the city. Signs were posted in local Jewish centers, and applications were made. Once in Vienna, they looked for children who could survive without their parents and keep their health. Financial backgrounds were not considered.
And then they had bunches of people that came and they cut it off at 1,000. And from that, they took 50. And I wasn't supposed to originally, just my brother. And somebody dropped out because they decided they didn't want to or couldn't, whatever. And I was the first on the maybe list. And we came.
Hundreds of kids waited in Vienna, Austria to be screened by Krauss and Schles. On April 17th, Gilbert called Eleanor explaining the vast numbers of children needing assistance and requested that she travel to Vienna and help. On April 28th, Eleanor arrived and immediately started to interview the kids. By May 20th, the Krausses had finalized most of their arrangements. They had a farewell dinner with the children and their families, and the following day, the families took their children to the train station, where they said goodbye. However, they were not even permitted to wave to each other in fear that it would be mistaken for the Nazi salute. As the children left their parents, many had no idea whether this was the last time they would ever see their families again.
It was horrible. I mean, remember, we had no way of knowing whether we'll ever see our parents and sister again. It's more than horrible.
They traveled to Berlin to go to the U.S. Embassy to receive the rest of the children's visas, German passports, and provided the affidavits that Eleanor prepared. Mr. Krauss arrived at the embassy, and after some harsh questioning from a Nazi stormtrooper, the Gestapo finally gave him the rest of the passports and confirmed their visas. The children then traveled from Hamburg to New York by the USS President Harding ship, which took 10 days. They arrived to the United States on June 3, 1939. All of the children went to the Bris Shalom retreat for the summer. The Krausses and their friends visited them every Sunday to check on them and bring gifts. The camp's purpose was to assimilate the children into American culture and give them a place to stay until each child had a home to go to. They took English classes because a majority of the children only knew how to speak German. They were sent all over the country to live with family members or to be put in foster homes. Some reunited with their family in the United States, but many children never saw theirs again. The Krausses received criticism from the Jewish community because of the worry that by bringing large groups of Jews into the States, anti-Semitism would grow even larger. Despite public criticism, the Krausses completed an act of selflessness that saved 50 children from being victims of the Holocaust, and saved the generations that followed their families. They also made it easier for their relatives to obtain visas since their children were already in the United States. The Krausses' actions could be used in crises going on in the world today. The United States' pattern of isolationism and denying refugees made Mr. and Mrs. Krauss taking a stand substantially more poignant in today's society.
There's places all over the world that these people are not wanted. They didn't do anything.
Whenever we assign characteristics, social characteristics, political characteristics, to a group of people, we are in danger of doing exactly what Hitler and the Nazis did when we say there is a race of people in this world and they behave in this manner, they have these commonalities. We're essentially closing the doors to understanding.
This rescue mission, completed by an ordinary Jewish-American couple, was the largest private rescue mission into America in history. Between 1938 and 1941, over 300,000 German Jews applied for visas in the United States, and most were unsuccessful. 1.5 million children were killed in the Holocaust. This Jewish-American couple, willingly traveling to Nazi Germany in the midst of fear and saving 50 child refugees, made a substantial difference in history.
Those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance.